All right, well, one of the quarterbacks, Shedeur Sanders, has gone from the fifth rounder to fourth string to now a legitimate chance to compete for a starting job. So what can you say about his trajectory and his rise through the program?
I think he's had an excellent spring, Anthony. I mean, the past 8 to 10 weeks, and really probably beyond that, really the past 6 months with, as a rookie player, and particularly a quarterback, you learn a lot your first year, and especially if you don't start a full season, start 6, 7, or I guess you start 7 games.
Let me put some real football math on the table. Jerry Jeudy is making over $10 million a year in Cleveland. Isaiah Bond is making $3 million across 3 full seasons. And right now, in shorts in spring practice, Bond is producing more highlight plays with Shedeur Sanders than Jeudy has all offseason. That math is not just bad. That math is criminal. In the NFL, your hands decide your role, not your paycheck. Smash that like button and follow for more bold NFL coverage.
Jerry Jeudy is about to fall from wide receiver 1 to wide receiver 4 on the Cleveland Browns depth chart. And the crazy part, the Browns didn't have to say a single word for it to happen. Because on paper, Jeudy is still the guy. He's still the veteran. He's still the receiver this franchise paid real money to bring in. But out on that minicamp field, where it actually matters, 2 names kept showing up in every rep, every highlight, and every insider note, and neither one of those names is Jerry Jeudy. And when you see what I'm about to walk you through, the rep distribution, what Andrew Berry actually said between the lines, and one quiet organizational signal that most people completely skipped over, you're going to understand exactly where this receiver room is headed, and it's not where anyone expected.
I guess you start 7 games, and you kind of go through the year. It's adjustment going to the NFL, and then you get a chance to catch your breath and say, okay, well, here are the things that I need to work on, here are the things I need to learn. And I think he did a phenomenal job this offseason. That really started in January and February, and then certainly as we got into having, real practices in May, his growth has been tremendous. So we're all very excited to see, Shedeur's, fall camp, preseason, things of that nature.
There is a version of Jerry Jeudy that the Browns believed in when they made this move. A deep threat with real speed, a receiver who just needed the right system around him, a talent that Denver never unlocked. And for a moment, it looked like Cleveland might be different. But minicamp doesn't lie. There's a specific kind of quiet that settles over a practice field when a veteran is struggling and the young guys are not. Nobody announces it. Nobody puts it in a press release. The coaches keep their faces neutral, but the reps tell the story before anyone is ready to say it out loud. That's where we are with Jerry Jeudy right now. Drops, not coming back to the football, the same habits that followed him out of Denver showing up again in Cleveland, and 3 young receivers, Isaiah Bond, Denzel Boston, and first-round pick Casey Concepcion, doing the exact opposite of standing still. The wound here isn't about one bad practice. The wound is what it means when a franchise's investment starts looking like a liability before the pads even go on.
Here are the things I need to learn. And I think he did a phenomenal job this offseason. That really started in January and February, and then certainly as we got into having, real practices in May, his growth has been tremendous. So we're all very excited to see Shedeur's, fall camp, preseason, things of that nature when we get into padded situations, live situations, less scripted, but his growth is.
Isaiah Bond is not asking for a role. He is taking one. According to The Athletic's Zach Jackson, Bond has been making highlight play after highlight play at minicamp. Not occasionally, consistently. He looks stronger, more confident, like a player who spent the entire offseason figuring out exactly who he is at this level. And then there's Denzel Boston, a rookie who started minicamp working with the number 2 offense and ended up earning legitimate starters reps during competitive periods. That does not happen by accident. Coaches do not hand those reps to rookies out of kindness. Boston earned them. Shedeur Sanders opened one of the 11-on-11 periods with a quick out to Denzel Boston. Think about that for a second. A quarterback who is fighting for his own starting job, a quarterback who understands that every single rep matters, chose to go to a rookie. That is not random. That is a quarterback telling you who he trusts. That is a quarterback building a connection in public. The Browns drafted both Denzel Boston and Concepcion in the same offseason. You don't build that kind of young receiver room if you are committed to running your offense through Jerry Jeudy. You just don't. Organizations do not spend draft capital on redundancy. They spend it on replacement. Jeudy made some plays. He did, but the drops were there. The effort on routes was inconsistent, and when the standout names for Minicamp are Bond and Boston, not the veteran, that is the stat that matters most. Not yards, not targets, presence. When was the last time you saw a team draft 2 wide receivers in the same class and still expect the veteran to hold his spot without competition? That question doesn't have a comfortable answer.
Yeah, Deshaun Watson is the other guy in the competition here, Andrew. If all goes well with him and he wins this competition and he plays well for the Browns this fall, do you see a world where he is the Browns quarterback into the future, and are you open to giving him a contract extension?
Yeah, I think everything's on the table. I think it would be silly to go into a season and say,
here is what nobody is saying out loud about Jerry Jeudy right now. This is an identity threat situation. When a player's entire professional self-concept is built around being the #1 option, when that is the role he was brought in to fill, the role his contract reflects, the role his confidence is tied to, and then he watches a second-year player and a rookie start eating his reps in front of the coaching staff, something happens in the mind before it ever shows up in the body. The drops get heavier, the hesitation gets longer, the routes that used to feel automatic suddenly require a decision. And here is the psychological tell to watch for. Is Jeudy getting louder or quieter? Is he the guy pulling Bond and Boston aside after reps, mentoring, investing? Or is he pulling inward? Because when a veteran goes quiet in a competitive environment, that is not focus. That is a pressure signature. That is a man who already senses the answer and isn't ready to say it. Now flip the camera. Look at Isaiah Bond. Bond is showing a completely different psychological profile. He is playing with what you can only call perceived locus of control. He believes the outcome is in his hands. His body language says he has already decided he belongs here. He is not waiting for validation. He is generating it. That gap between the player who is shrinking and the player who is expanding is what coaching staffs see before they ever look at the depth chart. And now think about it from Andrew Berry's point of view for a second. Berry is a GM who has watched this franchise spend years and enormous resources on the wrong answers at key positions. He knows what it looks like when a player is trending toward the exit and when a player is claiming ownership of a role. He does not need the preseason to tell him what Minicamp already showed him. But to understand why this moment hits differently, we have to go back to the actual words Andrew Berry used on that radio appearance. He said, and this is important, that spring is an install and developmental period, that the organization takes a developmental mindset, not an evaluation mindset. That sounds like a deflection until you realize what it actually is. It's a front office protecting itself from having to make a public statement about a veteran while the young players make the decision for them. Berry doesn't need to say Jeudy is losing his spot. He just has to let the field say it.
Something absolutely can or cannot happen. And I think particularly at the quarterback position, right? Like we've seen it with guys, whether it's Sam Darnold or Daniel Jones or Geno Smith or even Baker after he left us in Carolina. And so I think you have to be open-minded and flexible. I wouldn't rule out anything. We're looking for guys who can perform and who can lead.
Now, we have a really unique situation with Deshaun, just given everything we know about him and everything that he has worked.
Let's translate what Andrew Berry actually said, because every word a GM chooses in a press setting is chosen deliberately. When Berry was asked about Shedeur Sanders, he said his growth has been phenomenal. Not good, not promising, phenomenal. He said it twice. When Berry was asked about Deshaun Watson, he said everything's on the table. He wouldn't rule anything out. He referenced Sam Darnold and Geno Smith, players who reinvented themselves elsewhere. That is not a ringing endorsement. That is a man leaving every door slightly open. Now look at what Berry did not say. He was not asked a single direct question about Jerry Jeudy. Not one. That is not an accident. When a reporter spends time with a GM and the veteran receiver who is supposed to be the anchor of your passing game doesn't come up, that tells you where the organizational attention actually is. The social media tells the same story. Isaiah Bond highlights, Denzel Boston features, Shedeur Sanders to Boston on that quick out, the kind of connection play that ends up in team-produced content. Organizations market what they're excited about. The Browns are excited about their young receivers, not the veteran. That's not a coincidence. Organizations don't make accidents that cost them money. Now here's where people are going to disagree with me, and that's fine, because I understand the argument. It's spring, it's minicamp, Jerry Jeudy is an experienced NFL receiver, young players always look better in shorts than in pads. Wait until training camp, until live situations, until the lights actually come on. That's a reasonable position, and it might be right, but here's what I'd say back. Pattern recognition exists for a reason, and the pattern here, veterans losing ground in the spring, young players ascending, organizational investment shifting toward the new class, does not usually reverse itself by September. It usually accelerates.
Inside that building right now, 53 men are watching this receiver room competition in real time, and what they're seeing is a rookie and a second-year player refusing to be quiet. That energy is contagious. The players who work hard and get rewarded with reps, that changes the culture of a room. It sends a message to every other position group that production is what earns your spot, not tenure, not contract, not reputation. If Bond and Boston continue this trajectory into training camp, the locker room won't need a depth chart announcement. They'll already know. If this plays out the way the evidence is pointing, if Bond becomes a legitimate weapon, if Boston transitions into a starting role, if Concepcion lives up to his first-round draft status, the Cleveland Browns passing game looks completely different than anyone projected in March. Shedeur Sanders throwing to 3 young, ascending receivers who trust him and want the ball. That is not a rebuilding offense. That is a developing one. And there is a real ceiling on a team like that when everything clicks at the right time. 3 years from now, if this works, Minicamp 2026 will be the moment people point to, the spring when the old regime's receiver was quietly displaced by the future, the spring when Shedeur Sanders started building his connection with the next generation of Cleveland weapons. And if it doesn't work, if Jeudy reasserts himself, if the young players regress, if Watson wins the QB competition and the offense never coheres, this will be the moment people look back on and say the Browns should have known what they were building. They should have committed sooner. Either way, this minicamp mattered more than anyone is currently giving it credit for.
At the top of this, I told you Jerry Jeudy might be looking at a slide from wide receiver 1 to wide receiver 4. You probably pushed back a little. And now, after the rep distribution, after the organizational signals, after what Andrew Berry said and didn't say, you can see it. The field already made this decision. The front office is just waiting for the right moment to reflect it on paper. Because underneath all the depth chart talk and the minicamp highlights and the GM quotes, there's a simple human story happening in Cleveland right now. A young quarterback who was written off is building something real with receivers who believe in him. A second-year player who spent his rookie season proving he belonged is now playing like he already knows he does. A rookie is walking into a professional environment and refusing to act like a rookie. And a veteran who was supposed to be the answer is watching all of it and figuring out very quickly whether he is still part of the plan. That is not a football story. That is a story about who gets to decide what you become and whether the people around you believe it before you have to prove it. So here's what I want you to tell me. Is Jerry Jeudy a proven veteran who will reassert himself the moment pads go on and the real competition begins? Or has this receiver room genuinely passed him before the season even starts? Drop it below. I'll be reading every response.